You are hearing, reading, watching a lot about Russia and Ukraine these days. There is a round-the-clock news coverage, views, commentary, warnings, war preparations, and mother of all sanctions.
America have again warned Russia of devastating sanctions.
Ukraine and Russia.
Unsubstantiated claims from the Kremlin that some of its troops have begun withdrawing from the Ukrainian border.
In case they have to fight the 130,000 Russian troops.
Potential Russian aggression.
Attack by Russia next month seems all but certain.
Like any other issue or conflict, it's emulated out of one or either party is not okay with the status quo. And you wonder, what is or was status quo here? In short, it's a less than perfect democratic Ukraine sharing its Soviet-style politics. It's embracing Western values and even wants to join European Union and NATO. But Russia does not like it.
How would the Americans react if we placed our missiles on the border between Canada and the United States or on the Mexican border? 5 ways of NATO expansion. And there you go. Now in Romania and Poland, weapons systems appear.
On the one hand, we have more assertive Russia who wants to tell the world that between US and China, they also count. They have a say and resources to wedge on, the military and nuclear weapons. But how did we get here? When we look at the ginormous current day Russia today, there is this man. One-person army for some and current day czar for others, savior for some and dictator for others. Okay, going back to the topic, current day Russia was always not this big. It was way more big. But something happened in 1991. Soviet Union fell. This became, as Mr. Putin puts it, the greatest catastrophe of 20th century. We don't blame him, I think. He was not born during World War I and II. So Soviet Union, you say, it came into existence in 1922 after the years of turmoil and Bolshevik-led October Revolution of 1917, which was headed by Vladimir Lenin. Until then, it was ruled by Romanovs. Soviet Union kept expanding its borders, even assimilated parts of Europe, but the pursuit of expansion ended its very existence. And what do I mean by that? It's the same expansion strategy in Afghanistan, among other things, mostly economic, which led to its downfall in 1991. So cutting it short, post 1991, many of these sovereign independent countries started joining NATO. You ask, what is NATO? It's a military alliance for peace between US, Canada and 27 European countries. And the main principle is attack on anyone would be deemed aggression against all. It's a tough one. It wasn't anyway going too good for post-Soviet Union Russia, but countries which were part of Soviet Union started joining NATO. On top of that, Ukraine was becoming less of a not-so-perfect democracy. In November 2013, then President Viktor Yanukovych rejected a deal for a better integration with Europe while aligning with Russia at the same time. This irked the people and pushed them to streets. Viktor tried to use brute force against protesters, and Russia, for all reasons, supported him. But at the end of the day, he resigned and fled the country, and guess where he ended? Russia. Russia, trying to salvage its lost influence in Ukraine, invaded and annexed Crimea the very next month. In April the same year, Russian-backed rebels took control of 2 cities in eastern Ukraine called Luhansk and Donetsk in Donbas region. To contain the separatist movement, Ukraine sent its troops, as any other country would do, to its eastern borders. But Russia secretly starts helping the rebels. It leads to fierce fighting for a long time. There were fightings and of course ceasefire violations, agreements. In the middle of it, more than 14,000 people have died. Fighting actually never stopped. It had just disappeared from the news headlines. Then last year, which is 2021, a new leader was elected in Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, who intends to make Ukraine more democratic. He vowed to join NATO, which irked Vladimir Putin. Then last year again, 2021, Putin came up with these demands, which was for West as well as for Ukraine. In response to this, US and the West have gone all on full diplomacy as well as pressure on Russia. US President Joe Biden is sending more troops to Eastern Europe sending weapons to Ukraine, helping its allies in Europe to rely less on Russian energy and arranging alternatives. Is there going to be a war? On the one hand, Russia has amassed 100,000 soldiers on its borders with Ukraine, holding war exercises with Belarus, keeping its weapons where they aren't supposed to be. And Ukraine is doing the same with whatever capacity they have, massing its soldiers, asking help. Amid all this, there are people living on the borders of both sides who will suffer. Till now, 14,000 people, like I said earlier, have died in this war. But if it spills, surely going to be another tragedy in Europe.